Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Protector Manjushri, who holds to his heart a scriptural text symbolic of his seeing all things as they are. Wisdom shines forth like the sun. Unclouded by the two obscurations, who teaches in 60 ways, with the loving compassion of a parent for their only child. All wanderers caught in the prison of samsara, confused in the darkness of their ignorance, overwhelmed by suffering. You whose dragon thunder like proclamation of Dharma rouses us from the stupor of our afflictions and frees us from the iron chains of our karma, who wields a sword of wisdom, hewing down suffering where its sprouts appear, clearing the darkness of ignorance. You whose princely body is adorned with 112 marks of a Buddha, you've completed the stages achieving the highest perfection of a bodhisattva who has been pure from the beginning. I bow down to you, O Manjushri. Om Arapatsari, 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 Om Omarapasana. With the brilliance of your wisdom, O compassionate one, illuminate the darkness enclosing my mind, awaken my intelligence and wisdom, so that I may gain insight into Buddha's words and the texts that explain them. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, for land, sun, and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Iram Guru Rana Mandalakam Niryatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Sangye Chedan Zoye Chenam La Changshu Padon Dane Gyabso Che Daye Jinso Ngebe Sonam Dola Benje Sangye Dukura. 동년이 중도 주변의 마치세 센세 간제 된적은 차나도 못 된진 자수 소반도 조신도는 조조 라마자마 소로 고나다 외매 개선 타고 되게 중요죠 저게 되게 도전자 거에 센세 신이 남게 장시쇼 반대는 저거는 말은 뭐지 한다기 인거를 빼면 돼 쇼라 같은 신병원에 제론데 고zon도 영어로 전도 Good morning, everyone. Okay. Digbachian Mijashi. Diva, Tigdiva, Digbachian Mijashi. Gawa Pusum Soprache. Rangi Simne Yonsu do. Dine Sanje Demba Yins. Sanje Demba Signeti. And the Kandechi to Zingi or Sidu Zembe. Rangi Semi Yonsu Tubijugo Rees. Rangi Semi Yonsu Tubijuchumbeina. Ani Maranzu Digwachigme. Gawa Duguin said that Hamje Rangi Sim Matu Padu Yungumare. Teyang Ani Chigi Digwegi Lela Zawanin and Dromogova. Gewegi led Rangshug Yongdia. Teyang Candes Yungudosana, Rangi Sim Yongsu Tubal Denugres.
And so there's a very famous verse which talks about what the essence of the Buddha's teachings is, and that is that it says, commit not a single non-virtue, accomplish a wealth of merit, or a wealth of positive merit, tame one's own mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. So this explains to us the real core of what it means, what the Buddha's teachings are about. And essentially what it's saying to us here is that if until we have really thoroughly trained and tamed our own minds, then it will be difficult for us to avoid committing negative actions, and for us to engage wholeheartedly in positive actions. And it's only at that point where we're able to thoroughly tame our own minds that we'll very naturally then not get involved in anything which is negative, and we will be drawn to virtue. So this verse sort of helps us to orientate us to what the core of Buddhist teachings is.
So to fully tame our mind, especially this destructive emotion. And now in this level we talk about the three scopes. So I think we should say this in Tibetan. Jezanga Kibu Chungu Yikapso Ane Zo Ane Didan Chimani Nanone Didan Sedidan Chimani Nanone Chimegi Ane Chikarsore Ane Dungen di Mayagi Gulambediachi Di Yongsu Tultuachi Kiawa Chimegi Dunge Mayagi Chedo Dima Gadiachi Di Dulia de Zochi Zadagi Dene Kibu Ringi Kapso Didan Chimaniga Gita Karisore Yongsegi Zawa Dadu Zimbe Dengzin Tuyachi Ane Kibu Chimbuji Kapso Ane Rangi Sem Yongsu Tuyu Seba Zangi Ma Pembar Ane Shen Semjen Tamjig Tondo Ane Jikarsaure Shendun Beme Lundi Dubi Gu Sidu Kale Kunimeve Tone Jig Semjen Kandriji Tondalaya Kale Kazu Jamna Tangche Medi Ningi Ane Ta Subutindiji Dubiyagi Ane Tapshig Tondala Yang Chunila Zejudu Nyambar Shashibu Kone Yang Sem Tultangchik Kibu Chimbu Gausu Do Sejeta Sanjegi Lamgi Tidandabadi Sem Tultanda do Slabji Jungdua.
So we can also sort of put this verse that we've mentioned here into the context of the beings of the three scopes. So in terms of perhaps training mind in the context of a being who is of the lesser or the smaller scope, then their main purpose or focus of that kind of person would be to out of the suffering of this life and the next life, they will try to reduce the suffering which will come to them in future lives. So their sort of main focus is just to be able to avoid their own personal suffering in future lives to as much as they could as possible, and their sort of urgent work for them is to put a stop to that. When we get to the being of a middle scope, then they really, understanding the path from their perspective, their urgent kind of work, their main focus is in order to tame or to eliminate the self-grasping, so at that level, for themselves. But then, when you get to the beings of the greater scope, then when we talk about thoroughly training their own mind, they think about not only thoroughly training their own minds in a sense, but they have this much wider perspective of all the other sentient beings and how to help them to train their minds. So then their primary focus is focused on attaining the form body, because the form body is the body which is able to spontaneously and effortlessly work for the welfare of others, and doesn't get tired by making effort to help others. So that becomes their main, sort of one of their main focuses. And then, in order to help them achieve that, they focus on being able to sort of absorb them into suchness, the understanding of voidness in meditative equipoise as a method to be able to help them to achieve that form body.
So, how about we think like this? We all wanted to stay very peacefully in samsara. But there are two minds which makes us not to sit comfortably in this samsara. The one is renunciation. You think of, even I am this level of happiness, then what? Then what? Then what? So this mind takes away the comfortable seat in the samsara. The second one is compassion. That even you are comfortable in the liberation, you don't have, even your body is suffering, but your mind is in ease. This could be just a little bit of tease of the liberation. So you don't cling to this suffering, and Alex have this beautiful way to put it. You don't make a scene out from there. Okay. This is how you say it? Don't make a scene.
Don't make a scene.
Yeah.
Don't make a drama, a big scene.
So, and then compassion. Why Buddha cannot stay comfortably when he got enlightenment? Why he has to give us all these teachings, all this? We could say why the monastery is providing us this teaching called the emptiness and bodhicitta, and every time, even you don't know much, they are kind of brainwashing you in a good way. That is by the force of the one and only the Buddha's compassion. So the compassion and the renunciation has a strong kind of influence that, as we normally say, I'm under the sway of the negative emotion. And then this is why we are stuck. But also, if we are under the sway of the renunciation, and then compassion, And then one is you have to bring the ultimate happiness in the life. And then second one is you wanted to give the fully enlightenment to others, which is their ultimate goal. 다 딘데 인들 봐. 딘데 인들 잠베 아니 마란조 다 탐보데 마란조 최제 망부시고 유예베 나로네. 답변의 상기지 고방 탑이야 요래. 아니 전주 심지에 요래. 아니 타바 탑이야 요래. 아니 다 지기 대순배 최망부시 지기 유예베 나로네. 탐보데라 당아란조기 마란조를 다 탄다. 가도데 고야지. 아주다 비기너스로 줄 봐. 인도 beginner게 당부 쏘잡사다데 두수 상황 아주 미유 딘디지 중에 지모로 냠 셈기 세드 멤버 셈기 세네시 매매 치레 아이나 단다 갑도 말한도 쏘잡사데 가르세도 잠베 뇨몽기 아주 뇨몽기 tenyo래 송구요래 뇨몽기 tenyo 요고 뇨몽기 tenyo래 송번은 신지 아주 뇨몽기 tenyo 인다미 섬지디 삼로당에디 당안주기 le tangbo gi ji shu jap sa de sha di in the main said.
So therefore there are many sort of practices and many sort of goals and practices in terms of the way that we engage with the Dharma, and for instance to attain the fully enlightened state, to attain liberation, to accomplish the mind of bodhicitta. So there are many of these different sort of paths of practice, but if we and related to those will be those sort of the wishes. For instance, as beginners, wouldn't it be wonderful if I attain the fully enlightened state, or wouldn't it be wonderful if I attain liberation, accomplish bodhicitta? Those kind of wishes, such as the aspirational wish to attain the fully enlightened state for all beings, so the aspirational bodhicitta. But as beginners, one of the first things that we need to sort of examine is this sense of how we are slave to the mental afflictions, slave to these disturbing emotions, and we have to. And this is the sort of first place where we have to sort of examine ourselves to see whether we are indeed a slave to these disturbing emotions or not.
Mm-hmm. One of my teachers, he would say, when he was studying starting from the debate, logic and reasons, then until when he was studying, entering to the middle way, he always had a wish to fight his negative emotion. So he would say one of the best quotation of the Shantideva that really helped him, saying in the chapter 6th chapter of the Way of Bodhisattva's life, in saying that we have so much patience to our negative emotions, but we don't have a patience to the people who are disturbing us. But the person who really wanted to practice Dharma, who does not have a strong hatred, that's the good way to put it here, hatred towards negative emotions. They don't see the negative emotions as enemy. But the Buddha is always teaching us, if you lose the target, who is the real enemy in our life, then we will always, the wish to eliminate this enemy will always go weak and weak. So Buddha teaches you from in the Sutra, Tantra, in the Vinaya, all this, he teaches how to actually look at this, how to deal with this enemy. As in an ordinary life, if your opponent is so powerful, he is the boss and we are the slave. Then the slave has always a wish to one day I really wanted to eliminate that person. Similarly, the practitioner has to have, even how much you are suffering, but you really have to have this position to say, I really wanted to get out from this suffering. Then secondly, if you are now support or your practice is quite well enough, and then there will be a day when, say, like, now that it is not to destroy the enemy, it is more like I can be the same level of that, the position. I'm here, this is there, and I always bring this contradiction to where? Counteract. Yeah. Then on the higher level, you will use you are the boss, and the enemy is the
your servant.
It's a kind of, you will use your enemy. So in the Tantra, we use that. In a Sutra, we are just like one-to-one. So, not having this sort of attitude, then one who is saying, I'm a practitioner, Shantideva finds quite irritating. So, my teacher says, when he read this, oh, I kind of following the footsteps of the Shantideva, though he felt quite confident in his practice. Because the sign is, before seeing the teaching of the Shantideva, because he always loved to debate, so he would always debate to himself when he's doing some commitments or he's in a puja, rituals, whatever. He will just read something and then he will say, stop. What I'm saying, is this right? Is it really Dharma? Is there anything to do with my negative emotion? So then he finds, nope, there isn't. Then he will redo everything again. So that makes him a perfect practitioner. So now we need to
Do a bit of the text.
Sometimes I get carried away. Dinde indu zambe tang ran zo ge che mangpo chi ju yebe nang ro ne tang ran zo ani kasang dinan shung dinan go tang bu zo be ka le ya ani kale shiwu ji jab ni tama de le ya ani nyomo pang ya chab le ya nyomo pang ya chab de le ya 내가 먹고 싶으시 녀모 당도 하디요리 슬라베이나 뭐 이거 정서라 봐. 대인도 잠배 아란저기 아니 디빵나 아니 녀모 탐제랑 신기파 빵 투야기 녀바이네데 가르레 슬라베디 가르레스나 아니 덴제 통화 대기 아니 녀모 탐제 도토르스 디라 아니 우모 팅규비기 투모모인비기 체주 로 오만족이 땡제 통화기 아니 녀모세 세디기 시에 투요 말에 땡주비 송투요 다 딘데 셰드마 신내리그리.
So, sort of relating back to what we discussed a little bit in the beginning session yesterday, and in terms of there's many ways in which to there are many things that we do in practices that we engage in terms of our Dharma practice, and we can work extremely hard, make great effort in all of those things, but if in place of if our practice is some way in place of actually helping to abandon the mental afflictions, in place of that, as we've got some other form of Dharma practice which is not really getting strongly at the mental afflictions, and then we make tremendous effort and then end up still having so many of these disturbing mental states with us, then this really causes us a lot of unhappiness, having made so much effort. And so, connected with what we were talking about yesterday, in the sense that if our practice is able to help us to as we spoke about how with one practice we're able to eliminate all of the mental afflictions, and how understanding that the potential of seeing the truth of dependent origination, and then that helping us to remove our distorted views and therefore to eliminate all of the mental afflictions. So if we're able to see that great potential of that one particular way of approaching the Dharma, then this will sort of provide us with a much more constructive context for our Dharma practice. And this is a system, the understanding that the seeing dependent origination will allow us to eliminate all of our disturbing mental states, is something which is an uncommon presentation from Prasankhika Madhyamaka. And in the lower systems of philosophical tenets, they don't have, through their system, they're not able to explain how understanding dependent origination would allow us to remove all of our mental afflictions.
So my teacher and we had a long time a discussion of the why this dependent origination has the power to seize this self-grasping. It is difficult because to understand, because normally selflessness and self-grasping, it goes
directly opposite or directly
contradictory. But then, if you say dependent origination, it's not actually mega.
So dependent origination is not a non-affirming negative.
So we chazang nye gyandang ani ngani parlaya digita ani karsore dangzing kahtugres di kandis sigores. Denjung thongwa dege dangzing kahtugres di tunda karsigores.
So then my teacher and myself were having this discussion about how is it, what's the way in which seeing or understanding dependent origination helps us to get rid of, to eliminate the self-grasping. So this is the sort of topic of our discussion.
During the pandemic, the Giluk Association, all the lamas requested His Holiness to give a teaching on 3 principal aspects of the path. So, and then I got the opportunity to ask a question to His Holiness. And I didn't volunteer like that. I want to, because I don't dare to ask His Holiness any question. But then one of my friend Rinpoche really encouraged me to do it. So I checked with my teacher, should I hold this opportunity, which is golden opportunity. My merit pushed this to me. So, so then my teacher said, yes, you really need to ask a question to His Holiness. And then my teacher is so kind. He said, like, ask this question.
Your predecessor used to do that when His Holiness would teach and the Western students, and they would ask questions. He would have me read them to him. He said, these are terrible questions. And then he would make the questions to ask to His Holiness.
Yeah, the same thing, same story. So, so my teacher.
So you have to ask questions.
Yeah. So I asked this question to His Holiness. Then His Holiness, the one of the best answer. Everything is a blessing from him. Such an inspiration. He said, "What? I always tell this to everybody." That was like, I was thinking like, this is so good. You know, this question is so good. People who are listening to it, they have to listen it. And then I have this pride, you know. And then His Holiness just stopped me there. It's like, this is, he didn't say like it's not something new. He said like, this is something I normally say. So whenever you practice on a Tibetan origination, you have a clear understanding that has a two ability to bring down the Takta and Cheda.
The extreme of sort of eternalism and the extreme of nihilism, the two extremes.
And then I cannot go on and debate with His Holiness for sure. So I said, okay, like that. So then later after that, I think His Holiness opened the door of this discussion with my teacher. So time to time we meet and then we will always talk on this. So this you need to keep in your mind because Lama Tsongkhapa really pushes so hard to their students to bring this kind of understanding that when you reach to on the level of, you feel like you are on the level of the Prasankika school, you don't use emptiness directly as a weapon to eliminate the self-grasping. You need to have a quite understanding on the dependent origination and then going to the space-like meditation. So this has a quite a strong meaning. So this is why I think he put in, this will come up in the text here. It says he in a poetry way.
Poetic way, yeah.
Poetic way, he says, looking at the Nagarjuna's garden. This is how you put it, right? Garden. And I wanted to see this Nagarjuna's garden, but then Chandrakirti, Chand is the moon. With the Chandrakirti's light, I can see the Nagarjuna's garden. This is how he put it. So this is I think the flower that he wanted to see in the Nagarjuna's garden. Yeah. So now we move on that. Ta teze lodon denba yi tenjin drawa jungwe lam kyuji tenbe nenye du jidero kondo chuminjur. Teda lana gonjo lo tebe gone sushi ge tenne jung sunga le ngwazar juba jishi nye sechidu.
So then we'll read on in the text, so it's verses 3 and verse 4. So verse 3 reads, "So how can an intelligent person not comprehend that this path of dependent origination is the essential point of your teaching. This being so, who will find, O Saviour, a more wonderful way to praise you than to praise you for having taught this origination through dependence?
다디나로라 테질 로던 덴 바이스 로던 덴세 로던 덴센 세야디 아니 지딘 탐지디 쿠바 용사 자와데 머리바체 머리바테 아니 아란즈기 다단다 틴주비기 람라 덴네 등진 지게 용수 줘봐 당매 용수 줘봐 또 도야당 등진 친이 장와지 맵스도야 그러봐 딘디지기 용야 임바디 아니 그래서 그래 학국인 고긴라 딘디지 요르세 얘기 체주의 학국인 고긴라 아니 저랑게 딘중게 람네 아니 동배턴이야 먼주보다 컨디스 용시 그랬어 딘중게 튼 그러봐 딘중게 튼 tel라테네 아니 동반이기 고아디야 일대 레고요 그러봐 제상가 대체로던 덴바이 시도점비 딘중 동바도 딘중니디 개화매바 통배 토네 아니 아주 머리바 세하기 아니 딘트기 로던 덴바지 삼보 코긴나 당동양 아니 저런 딘중기 담라 가르치니 죽음에스 우마 틴주비 담라 가르치니 죽음에스 로던 덴바지 이나스 거래.
And so here in the first line, it says in the English, it says, "How can an intelligent person not comprehend this path?" So when it relates here to an intelligent person, we sort of have to. And this connects with verse 2, where it said, "Whatever generations there are in the world, the root of all these is ignorance." So it's particularly someone who understands that ignorance lies at the root of all the complications and degenerations of the worldly life. And then this sort of criteria or the qualities of this person who is intelligent, said to be intelligent here in the first line, is an understanding through the path of the Prasangika system that is someone who is able to develop a complete understanding of selflessness, and therefore also to be able to, with that complete understanding of selflessness, to be able to then be able to take on the self-grasping, the sort of real and deepest levels of self-grasping with their complete understanding of selflessness. So it's one intelligent also means here this one who has that kind of quality. And also, very importantly, understanding that the meaning of dependent origination and how, on the basis of a strong understanding of dependent origination, that a deeper understanding of voidness or emptiness will arise on the basis of their stronger understanding of dependent origination. So they see. This kind of person sees that dependent origination and emptiness are not in contradiction with each other. And therefore, they're able to, really then use that as a way to finally exhaust all of the ignorance and the afflictions. And so, it would be someone who would say, why would I not engage in the understanding of dependent origination? Because of these qualities that, by seeing this sort of process.
So in here mainly there are two audiences. One is the non-Buddhist schools, and then within the Buddhist school, from the Savatantika until the Karsa, Chadamawar Karsa, Babashika school. So now the Lama Tsongkhapa is actually poking, saying like, what you're doing is not enough. Why not coming to this path?
Yeah, maybe not.
다 줌젠디 오마들에 강강 깬라라레바 대대랑신 지도시 송어들의 양튼베 레돔춘이 지시유스.
And so then, sorry, what I didn't say. Yeah, she said, why would you not engage in this understanding if because of all this? So then we move on to verse number 5, where it says, "Whatsoever depends on conditions, that is devoid of intrinsic existence. What excellent instruction can there be more amazing than this proclamation?"
가시다디 ngaranzu 남샤준도 단다 자와들 때더라. 자와디 디나도가 10제 든지 된숨나도가. 아. 10제 든지 된숨이 나로라. 아버지 10제 든지 된숨나 dorna 세치도와. dorna 오보 칸다 랑랑기 규진의 여나 여라. 매나 매바 대다 추진 랑용 오유주의 랑신지 동대 랑기 규진을 라레베 샤만진비 치스 다도거도와 어디 띵년을 좋아도 콘솔이냐 되셨다.
So then in commentary to this this verse from Prabhu Narayana Champa's commentary on this verse, it says in summarizing the meaning of verse number 5, it says whatever phenomena have their own causes and conditions. They would have to have their own causes and conditions. If they didn't have their own causes and conditions, so this is there's a logical syllogism. So it says, sorry, I have to do it on the fly. So taking as the subject of the syllogism, if whatever phenomena, if they have their own causes and conditions, they exist, and if they don't have their own causes and conditions, they would not exist. Taking that as the subject, they're empty of their own. They're empty of the nature which establishes them by way of their own entity. That's the predicate, the sort of thing to be proved. And the reason is because they rely, because they are something which is under the power of something else, because they rely on their own causes and conditions. So the church did this. No, yeah. So just if we maybe for the subject we just say all phenomena, phenomena. Let's keep it like that. Phenomena. Are empty of a nature, a self-establishing nature, a nature which establishes them by way of their own entity, because they rely on their own causes and conditions, and therefore are under the control or under the power of other, something other than them.
Now this syllogism becomes a huge controversy between the non-Buddhists and the Buddhist schools. Because for the non-Buddhist, at the beginning, that the Karsore, Rangi Jujin Letube, and a Shamanchen Sayagi, that did not roll, and yet a quarter of Stagurba, Unzulam Sankelen to Mare.
Yeah, so there needs to be some sort of in the interplay between these systems. There needs to be some sort of discussion about the reason or the proof which is given here, which is that they are they're sort of under the control of others because they rely on their own causes and conditions. So this is already a topic which some of the systems will find immediately hard to accept. So there has to be a lot of discussion just around that. The sign which is being given for this.
Rangi Gujen le Deva Yenza Rangani Mavaji Gumzin Shea on the Zambe Tilia Tamarus.
So here you see this very great distinction.
차오마 중세로 차오마 중. 캡로다 세들어다.
Kepler. Yeah. So here you see this very distinct, a great distinction between the Svatantrika Madhyamaka school and then the lower tenet systems below that, and then the Prasankhika Madhyamaka school, where for Svatantrika schools and below, they will say, because something relies on its own is sort of other, under the control of other, because it relies on its own causes and conditions. Therefore, that's not a proof that things are naturally empty of this kind of inherent existence. It's a proof that they do exist from their own side. For those schools, if something is under the power of, I can't find the right word for that. Alex,
basically dependent on other things.
Yeah.
This is talking about Tenshinubba being able to produce an effect.
So being what did you say?
Under the influence
of other.
Yeah, or just dependent on others.
So dependent on others.
Controlled by others.
Yeah, controlled by others because they have their own causes and conditions. So they're controlled by this other thing, which is their causes and conditions. Therefore, they must have an inherent nature. They must exist from their own side. This is for Svatantrika and below. But then you see for Prasankhika, they're saying for the very reason that something is under the power of other, which is that of its own causes and conditions, that must necessarily not exist from its own side. So here, even as the syllogism is sort of expressed to others, they will feel that this sort of what we call the pervasion, the reason that something must must lack inherent nature, essential nature, because it is under the power of other causes and conditions, is the exact opposite for these people. So they have this answer, which is Kepodra, means that the reason is completely the opposite, actually, of what you've said.
That deal page thing that is gorgre. They go nenga charge station charge lewa. They dig out the days on gorgres. They gonna that run to ya ane rale set. Gujen rale dantel ya. 저 띵중 세대 땡의 중앙에서 띵중을 차라니 남주 셰브나 신 규진 띵중께 셰 안에 되네 지금 응송신을 되메되세 다 지금 되네 지 셰고래세게 아니 띵중 차지 계제 시기로 왔다 실을 때 띵주스 때 띵중세 셰고로 봐 대인도 좀 년려야 배나 란주 최담지 다 최담지서 거는 뒤지 최남랑이 규진을 라레브레스 두점be dilaya aningelaya charani samroji ngelo dozi sewago.
So we need to just back up a little bit here, because that's a kind of big statement that we've just made there. We need to sort of get some background in order to understand that. And to understand that, we this sense here which is being said, that when we use that word rely on, so let's in this case functioning things, not all phenomena, but functioning things rely on their causes and conditions. So we have to look at that a little bit, and then when we look at that, there are sort of many ways in which phenomena rely on others. So, for instance, in a dependently originated way, phenomena rely on others at different levels of subtlety, coarser and more subtle levels. So, for instance, here the reliance on their causes and conditions is at the level of kind of causal dependence. But then there are sort of deeper levels where a phenomena exists by reliance on its a reliance on its basis of designation, so sort of imputed kind of dependent nature. So they have. There are different levels of this. So first of all, we look at this when we're talking about these functioning objects, as impermanent functioning objects that rely on their causes and conditions, this form of causal dependence. Then this also has different levels of subtlety to itself.
제장하다 라 레다 말레시 베지 지단이 라 레바 세팅은 또 저기 과대주요래. 다 가초는 삼로당도 라 말레바. 라 레벨에 차라 니시온도 라 말레벨에 차라 셰고요. 데임도 선배 gyujen la ra malebegi ani samlo de la ya charani yobade samlo khodu zambe nyen la ya ani pena chikaso junje kol ge shebena ani gyuda ken tedan temena timijeba pena 지금 사회면은 뉴미 미제바 된저기 라과티 아주 참여하고 그랬어. 다 텔레 차지 삼로당 두점베 아니 랑이 탄다 통데비 디부디 랑이 디부디기 모디 규급수 매베이나 아니 디기 준제긴 자와 샤마토야. 어디로와 된저지 창원도 점베 디 Tiang ma deba, Jibu Dindri Chigi, Odi Gu Kabla Mena, Timinjungwa, Dindri ma de Samlo Jiti, Ani Tanda Medawa, that Medawa Solo, Junde Ta, Samlo Tanda, Ma deba Ta.
So in terms of relying on, this whether things rely on something else or don't rely on something else, I think for most of us, it seems easy for us to sort of get a handle on things relying on other things. That seems to appear to us quite easily. But the opposite of that something would not rely on anything, is actually much more difficult for us to sort of get to get a handle on, to get an understanding of. In relation to this kind of relying on something in a kind of causal dependent way, then there are sort of different levels of so there are different levels of the way things. There are subtle levels about the way that things rely on each other in relation to causes and effects, and there are also different ways. The opposite of that. There are two ways in which they don't rely on each other, non-reliance. So in terms of this, when we look at there's sort of a coarser level and a subtler level, and at this coarser level, it's that idea when we're talking about cause and effect that. If there's no seed, then a sprout or a seedling will not arise. If the seed doesn't exist, then there can't be the arisal of the seedling or the sprout. That's at this kind of most coarser level. But the deeper level of thinking about that is in terms of when we look at an effect or a result of something like the seedling, the sprout. If we look at that, and then. The way of thinking. This is in terms of the way we think is that there must be something of that result, such as the sprout, in the cause itself. And if there weren't something of that sprout in the cause itself, in the seed, then the sprout would not be able to arise from the seed. So this is a Yeah, so this way of saying that if something doesn't exist, this cannot arise. It's always in this process in relation to cause and effect. So there are two levels. One is that if there's no seed, there's no sprout. The other is if there's not something of the sprout in the seed, then it cannot arise. So those are two subtler levels. One subtle and one not.
So, for an example, for me, okay, the subtle level of this, the connection of the cause and the result. For an example, Alex already announced that I'm 40 now. So now, I have always a strong thinking that from the day one until now, I'm still the same guy. No problem. I'm not saying I'm a different. That will be quite. But how we look the same is very funny, because I would, in my somewhere deep inside, to hold to this statement comfortably, I will feel like this me as a baby this me is this me is now, up to now, I'm here. It looks like no problem. There's no problem. But then it is so funny because, but at the same time, because in the debate system, what we are taught, it's very nice. Gewa.
Yeah, two things being contradictory.
Yeah,
So you can't posit a common thing or a common locus between two things. So therefore, they're what we call contradictory phenomena. They're in contradiction.
So, and then the tanda di chiralam digdo chezanga nga logic yende be medi nga tanda lo shibju lejo medi yin sigyo maris. Logic ni leba di du shiji du yongde nichi. An tanda pado du se den shibju pado le di nichi ganzo samlo kogu yoras. Diyan gyun tsamshigi shigyo maris. Diyan ngo magaba. Ngame ngo magaba du ngo di ma du yongde nichi tongu yoras. Dela sanje chumden digi dela ya takwar zambe tengzi chamos yungu zina yoras.
So I'm not saying the person who when I was 1 year old is still the person who I'm 40 years old now. That's not what's being said here. But what we're looking at is this way that starting from that sort of 1 year old and coming all the way through to myself now as a 40-year-old, it feels like there's something which is still there. And this is not just being explained in terms of how we can talk about a continuum of a person. This is not what is being said. It's that there is some feeling that from that 1 year old all the way through each, right up until the 40-year-old, there is something of the entity of the original person, which is the previous person, which is still there. There's a sense that there's still the entity or the nature of that those earlier moments of the person, which are still here right now today. And this is what the Buddha describes, clinging on to that. That's that idea or that way of clinging is what the Buddha has described as the subtle clinging to the subtle permanence of things. Oh, sorry, the subtle clinging to the permanence of things.
제장가 될래야 ngaranjogi atma seki keji chirubalaya keji shesa diragyo ores. Di meba sevna midaba phungbu shin ko meba chalu ores. Phungbu di ngazo sugi phungbu di meba chawa na shin dende atma di ngodi gaji ngo chima di dang kuni gewaji khelang du chambe di luyu lu chu motubni ani shine kansa takba phungbu meda seki keja di dine chumur bas.
So this is where you see this presentation in the sort of non-Buddhist systems of how the person would be permanent, but the aggregates would be impermanent, because they feel that if just as the aggregates for those systems, just as the aggregates will, like the form aggregate will eventually sort of disappear, that they would become non-existent at some point. That if you didn't have this identity, this entity which continued on, which they would call Atma, then the person itself would become non-existent, because it would, if it had the same kind of nature as the aggregates, it would perish eventually. So that's where on the basis of this is where the thinking of many of those sort of non-Buddhist Indian schools talks about Atma and this in relation to this.
Can we also relate this whole discussion to karmic cause and effect? That if you haven't done the cause, you're not going to experience the result. That whole discussion for the coarse level. And on the subtle level, would you understand it, or can it also be understood that when you have the karmic potential, that the result doesn't exist fixed in the permanent, in the cause, and just waiting to pop out, but that also is impermanent. So that's another. Is that another level of understanding the subtle?
Yeah. couldn't connect to that. Yeah.
Is the main emphasis on karma then in this whole cause and effect discussion, rather than the seed and the sprout?
다디 단다 쪽이 presentation 디 카르레스라비나 계제슈디 아니 다 삼르레버 봐. 아니 나시니디 균두 스튜니 아니 용년지 자원이네 매비나 anga meba chadu doa slabdu zambe anga meba chago maris ani phungbu chö zamla dene tawa zamshire se ta shini di tingyu gejena je chö tamje rwa rang ngoy done majoba an tele dene tawa zamshire slaba nashingi lo oma zoge yang tinashin len tagu yores phungbu chö zamla dene tawa res.
So this whole sort of thing relies on this. The whole sort of discussion or presentation here is sort of what will come to our minds.
Gyujin chopa zamla seti.
Gyugen Sopasam.
Dene tawa zamse gejet ma shevche. Gyujin chopa zamgi dire se chö zamshi.
Yeah. Pumbu Nizuki.
Oh, dire.
Dutsam. So then this relies on that, again, on this sort of real sense of how if there wasn't some kind of continuity to the I, to the self, coming through from the past into now, if there wasn't that and into the future, if there wasn't some kind of continuity to the I, then the I would basically would be non-existent. So these systems are looking for something where there's some kind of continuity to the self, and even we say in the Prasangika Madhyamika system about how the self, for instance, doesn't exist from its own side, but is merely imputed by conception. This phrase that we use. Well, actually, there's a similar kind of presentation going on in the lower schools where they say the I is merely imputed to the aggregates because of the coming together of causes and conditions, which would be the aggregates, the aggregation of the aggregates. Merely on the basis of that, an I is kind of posited. So they also have a something along the lines of a similar kind of idea is there, as is said in Prasangika, that it doesn't exist from its own side, but is merely imputed by conception.
So normally, maybe you all heard best example to meditate on impermanence is to go to the place where there is a river. Towards the river, you look at it, and then it says, "Oh, this is the best to do the meditation." So I was thinking a long time ago, because it momentarily changes, it never stays still. So this could be the one teaching, but I never had a kind of a deeper understanding than that. But now, through this my teacher's teaching, was very subtlest. The impermanence is, if you look at the river that I'm just looking at the water flowing, and then you will still, the clinking is, you can see even the water is continuously running, but you still have a strong grasping this water. And we hold to this entity of the water. We have still this holding strongly. Even though we cannot just put the finger in this water, but we have to hold to some ground this kind of attentive of, the water does not, this water is impermanence. It momentarily change. We hold this attentive of the water, attentive of this water very strongly. So, most disturbing for me to meditate when the fear comes out, saying like, I cannot hold to any kind of water here now. Because
because the moment is the previous moments, the entity of the previous moments has ceased. It's already finished, completely finished. So then, there's sort of, in that sense, so the first moment is it's already gone. Even the second moment, as we're looking at it right now, it's already going. It's disappearing. It's becoming non-existent. And then it's really hard to, when looking at this river, it's really hard to get something to cling on to say this is the river. So this is the difficult feeling.
Perhaps another way of saying this is, rather than essence, the essential nature of the water in the river is that it's always water. And it's always the water of the river. So its essential nature seems to remain the same, but that is what changes from moment to moment. So it isn't that its identity is something which, that remains the same. I mean, in a sense it remains the same, but it changes from moment to moment.
So now, if you take this example on you, then there's a bigger problem.
I'm always me.
Yeah. So whenever you hold this me, I very strongly, so where is this kind of identity actually where you are labeling at, right? So then, as we say, we look too near to the emptiness, then there is fear will come up. So even we reach to the level of too near to the impermanence, then the fear comes up too. So sometimes it's good to reach to the little fear, because as a children, how much parents advise them, teach them actually not to touch the fire. And then 1,000 times you tell, they will not listen. So then one time they burn a little bit and they cry, okay? Then they learn it very well. Similarly, we need to have this kind of practice. So then we will ask the huge question like, where is that kind of the I that I am really labeling? Because here, the ngāgi ngārangi rangshin liya mātabche, rwa, tanda dindegi tselandi, ngādi ane ngāgi ngōjo rwa, gyungi tōne ane kawali shagadu se, ngādi tselandi re mādo, tanda ngā ranzogi ane tinjubi tawa nashin, ane tenla pabdang nashingi, 동이 되는 거다 더 말했어. 제장가 동반이다 미다반이 계지시온도 잠베 동반이디 시디 다랑 샤네 디기 띵기 캐주제니 지레스.
맞아요.
야 미다 동반이 제니디 간데 고르스노. 코랑게 뭐 가르레스 제니 고르레스. 어디리. 다디니 양고 투약이인가 요레스. 단다디 캐주제니 로르마도 디기 코랑게 뭐 코랑 제니들로도 말와.
So yeah, we're sort of a little bit careful here when we're talking in terms of this impermanence and even the subtle impermanence. Actually, we're still looking at the sort of qualities or characteristics of a phenomenon in the sense, but we're not looking into its deepest nature at this point. We're not looking into its kind of the actual nature of existence, its final nature of existence. We're looking at actually secondary characteristics of a phenomena. So you almost have the phenomena here, and then you're looking at the different criteria or characteristics of it, rather than when we're talking about emptiness. We're looking at, particularly, in Prasankika system of emptiness, you're looking directly at what is the ultimate kind of nature or existence of something at its kind of entity level, whereas this is more like a criteria or characteristic when we're thinking of impermanence. And so here we're looking at how something exists, and then the way in which, in some way, there's a continuity between the way something existed was there in the past and now is here. We're looking at sort of continuity of that, but not into its really deepest, ultimate nature at this point. So we shouldn't confuse the two together, the way of investigating and analyzing this.
다 단다 디기 단다 규진래 라 말레비 추기 차라니든 저 차버체 다 양아란주 띵중 시온도 전배 아니 최신의 라말 라레 말레세티 다 띵중 차드레 다 띵중 차서로 다 띵중의 준제 띵중 다 때네 답에 띵중스 니시베난 다 때네 답에 띵중게 시온도 양그 최신의 라레 말에 게 시온도 전배 다 라말레베텔라 양 삼로단다 니 중체 베나 지금 라바디 컨트롤 지르스나 아니 강사 더버디 풍불 라레버 요데메스 강사디 풍불 강사스니디 풍불 라레그리 말에 세야디 라바도치.
So here we're talking about this has been what we've been discussing so far is in terms of two ways that things maybe are not reliant on others, but only in the context of cause and effect. So whether they rely on cause and effect or don't rely on cause and effect or not. So that's what we've been looking at. But then as we sort of go into a slightly deeper level of explanation of how things might be dependently arising or originated, and that a different level of dependence where not cause and effect, but just relying on another, or relying on something else in order, because rangi trupala shenna ramaleba.
보르르르 간사디 풍불 라 말레버 로스 요리 요마레시로 로스 메바 더버디 and 라 말레바 세디. Yeah.
So this way in which so thinking about the level of dependence whether one phenomena relies at all on another phenomena or not, or doesn't rely, completely unreliant on other phenomena, or it is reliant on other phenomena, but not just in terms of cause and effect. And this is a sort of deeper level of dependently related.
Yeah, whether something depends on something else, I mean like a basis.
So dependently, so this is a level of not causal dependence, but related dependence is called denidapa. And this level, we're thinking here in terms of whether things rely on something else or don't rely on something else. So for instance, the question would be in relation to the aggregates, the person and the aggregates. Does the person rely on the aggregates or not? Or is the person just something completely separate from the aggregate? So this is at this level of dependence, this is the questions we're asking in terms of relation. Is something related to others or not?
Yeah, imputedly existent or self-sufficiently existent.
Yeah.
다디 베징 안주 참매기 간사디 아니 풍불라 라레그리스 베나 간사 응외 송알라 베나 간사 응외 송알라 아니 풍부 응외송아 오늘 로그레스 다들 잠베 풍부를 라레바디 세바하고도 디라고도 지르도가.
And so the coarse form of this in terms of whether this is in terms of this imputed dependence is whether, for instance, in terms of identifying a person and in relation to whether we need to identify in order to identify the person. Do we need to identify the aggregates first of all? So in order to know what a person is, we would need to know what the aggregates are. So this way in which you would have to know another phenomena in order to identify the first phenomena. And that level of kind of imputed dependence.
다디 지금 란주 두다마와 폐체백다 송구요래 이나연다 차디 가르시에 두고 요마서 뒤점배 아니 디나로 요나신 풍불라 간사기 오 매버 간사 미주바다고 세티 풍불라 간사기 오 고레스 풍불라 간사기 오메나 간사 매버 차두레스 제장가 딘지기 떼바 아니 마떼바세티 차웨토네 간사 기 오 간사기 오디 풍불이 되면 세 되게 되셔야 차
And so that's at a sort of, and that's at a kind of coarser level in terms of just do you need to identify the aggregates first before the person. But there's a subtler level of this kind of dependence in relation to the person and the aggregates, which is to say that, so because most systems will say something like, in order to identify the person, you need to identify the aggregates in some way. But when we take that to a sort of more subtle level and look at it, then and we look at whether the relation of the person and the aggregates, then at this subtler level, the need to it would be this sort of clinging to the idea that the entity of the person has to be in the aggregates. There has to be some entity of the person in the aggregates. This ra lebe.
ra maleba slavna tanda dinaro le yobna shincheje kansaji ngodi pungbu kansaji ngodi pungbu nalola yogore telemena telemebaji tusena matebaseti.
Yeah, so and if you didn't, so the entity of the person would have to be in the aggregates. If it were not in the aggregates, then the person would be unreliant on the aggregates. That's at this subtle level of relation, dependent relation.
Perhaps I can make that a little bit in other words. You have imputedly existence, whether something can exist. In order to exist, it has to have a basis, like the self has to have a basis. That's the roughest level. Or a whole has to have parts in order to exist. Next level is imputedly knowable, that to know something, you have to know the basis first, and then you can know the thing. First you have to see a body in order to then see a person. And this is talking, the most subtle level is the essential nature of a person, is that inside, like the mind or so on. So there are phenomena that the essential nature of it is in something else, like in the aggregates or in the mind for a person, or that its essential nature is just in itself. So these three levels.
So now this is the most difficult part, because why would you try to hold that there is a self within the five aggregates? Normally it's never a concern. This is not kind of our investigation. But why all other school other than the Prasankika school has to bring this presentation, the self has to be within the five aggregates. Why this becomes very important? This we need to discuss a lot actually. 제장가 디 아란주다 주다마와 시디 산지 좀 된디기 아니 동반이 용수 줘봐 통발라 아니 주다마와 시마도 고마래 nga 고마래 좀 된디 송 내 송배 나로네 아니 제다마와 너데와 셈잠바 우마바 봐도 아니 창마로기 간사게 담에 땡라 칼리 간사게 담에 땡 팝 셈잠베 갑네 아니 최기 담에 땡라 팝 되네 니네야 최기 담에 땡라 팝온도 잠베 아니 최기 담에라야 다 남중어 란저기 지금 간사 신이디 가르 조 간사 신이디 가르도스 제바체치 아니 간사 신이디 아니 풍부 인바이나니 가르도선다 샘잠베게 아니 파 딱된다지 제제 아니 샘로 로스 주베 간사지면 두스 아니 샘로 때는 아니 간사데 셰고도스 아니 랑주발레 양 도데 줘바다 nenjur 줘바 니레체 야 지게 nenjur 줘베 오마베게 야 지게 그런 간사스니데 딱된제네 샘직시 야 전다 가서 그래 랑 단다가 저 도데 줘바 오게 다가랑 아니 진식이 남시 송되도 봐. 다 텐주베기 갈지 딱된 제니 강사스니데 봐. 딱된 제니 아니 풍부나는 제원도 좀 될라 딱된 제시고. 딱된 제원도 좀 강사스니데 풍부나로네 요 구글이 풍부응연의 요 구글에 쓰니데 가자레스. 풍부응연의 강사스니데 두버 들점에 요 말레스. 딜러도 때지 나란저 로려야 마데비치 렉부구였다. 디니얼 증가다.
So in terms of this, in terms of the when the Buddha was explaining how to get a full understanding of sort of selflessness or emptiness, he is very clear that he doesn't present. He presents four philosophical tenet systems in order to help us understand, help us to get an understanding of a complete understanding of emptiness. He doesn't say any more. He doesn't say there's not five or more. There's four particular systems, and what we see within these four particular systems is ways of trying to explain the sort of lack of self. Is that from the Vaibhashika and then all the way up to the Vaibhashika and then the Sautantrika, particularly, then you see this strong presentation of selflessness of persons, and then it's only when you get to really the mind-only school, the Chittamatra, where they start to talk about the selflessness of phenomena. But the question is mainly focused on what is the person, what is the self, and whether the self is found within the aggregates. So when searching through, when looking for what is the person or what is the self, then we take as the basis of appearance or the designation of the person the aggregates, and then search within that basis of designation to find what the person is. So, for instance, with the mind-only school, you'll see where they are searching through the aggregates. They'll come to the idea that it must be the mind that is the person. So that the mind so it's not something separate from the aggregates, and it's the mind, the mental consciousness, which is they identify as the aggregate, which is that of the person. And then you get different presentations in the Yogacarya, Svatantrika Madhyamaka, and the Sautantrika Madhyamakas. You see the different presentations of. So, for instance, with the Sautantrika Madhyamakas presentation, Sautantrika Svatantrika Madhyamaka, you see them presenting the Alex, you have a better explanation of this.
The mind consciousness, which is the basis for the defining characteristics of the person.
So the defining characteristics, they find the mind, this kind of mind, to be the sort of defining, the one which has the defining characteristics of a person. And because of Yogacarya, then because of this Trupa Yishi. So the sixth mental consciousness is what the Yogacarya Svatantrika Madhyamaka will find to be the person. But it's only when you get up to the system of Prasankika Madhyamaka that you see that when searching in the sort of basis of designation of that which is a person, and looking for the person within the basis of designation, and explaining that if you find the person from the side of the basis of designation, in this case the aggregates, then that itself is the object of negation for this system of Prasankika Madhyamaka philosophy. And there's not one atom of existence of the not one atomic existence of the person from the side of the aggregates, that is the object of negation, that this is the understanding of Prasangika Madhyamaka. And this, I think, when we hear this, actually, it starts to make us feel a little uncomfortable.
So now let's keep it simple. So now, within you can think as the Buddha as the Prasangika school holder. And we all are in the same boat of feeling like the person should be within the 5 aggregates. Why? We need one solid reason. Just we don't complicate things now here. Okay, so we make it very simple. Things has to appear from the aggregates. The I has to be within in the 5 aggregates. Reason is very simple. Why? Very simple. That I appears from that. What is better reason than that? My I appears from my aggregates, not from yours. Your I is appearing from within you. So what far better presentation needed than that actually to hold the position? That's what all the schools are trying to say. And we are same here. We feel like somewhere when you talk, oh, I'm not feeling well today. So what you're holding through your feeling. And if you say, oh, you are a short guy, then it really, I take very personal sometimes. So that comes discrimination there. Oh. So within this, you feel, I'm there, actually. So, but then Prasangika is kind of laughing at us now, saying, whenever Prasangika hears that self, because it appears from there, because the reason we always say it appears from there, and that is the solid reason that I is within the 5 aggregates. This is how we hold the position. The reason is it appears from there. So then Prasangika is saying, one of the best example for us that even it appears, but not necessarily it has to be there, is one example is the striped rope. Striped rope.
The striped rope.
Snake karsa dit labnande. Taktal du. How do you say this?
The striped rope appearing like a snake.
Oh yeah, striped rope appearing like a snake. So now namju chezanga chetamje tokbe takam said it. That dination is sigurta. Tobe tazam re sidu chambe tobe tazam ge koa de la. Tobe tazam sidu semzambe na shin ani loipa shagyo jigo ma imbeche. Loipa shama korang wen ruba zame du zame yomare said it tinjube tawareta. Dashine tinjube gejed sigor. De indu taje ngene chung anjul du nangyorbe. Nangyor. Taje ngene du yorbe yomare. Dinashin pungbu ngene anjola 다 통구여be 다 nanguyorbe nanguyor. 이나양 풍불라 아니 다 열베 여말에 다르듯 통나시레스 어디 샤고다베.
So this example, of the striped rope and the snake, and connects with this understanding of what it means to be merely imputed by conception. So here, the meaning for certainly for the Prasangika system of being merely imputed by conception, it's not just like in Chittamata, when in some sense things are created or made by the mind. It has a much deeper understanding in the sense that for Prasangika, to be merely imputed by conception means that there's not a single atom of existence from the side of the sort of basis of designation of the phenomena. And so, for instance, in this example of the snake in the striped robe, the snake appears from the side of the striped robe, but the snake doesn't exist. There's no existence of the snake within the striped robe, but it appears to exist from the side of the striped robe. And in the same way, the self appears to exist from the side of the aggregates. It appears from the aggregates or from the side of the aggregates. But in the same way as the self, there is no self which is actually in the aggregates. And so that's this understanding of dependent mere imputation, merely imputed by conception, where something doesn't exist from its own side at all. So there's no self to be found within the aggregates for this system of Prasangika.
Digi ta shine ngaranzu kari kyabadi kari kaako sedu zambe korangi ngöne yödi korangi ngöne 가자 풍부디 가사디 풍부 나로 요레스 가르젠스나 풍부 ngöne 철기도 와스나 캬바마 중세데 랜드라브다 팅교베간졸라.
Yeah, so we sort of, in the sort of debate where we have this answer which says there's no pervasion, which means that's not necessarily true. The thing that we have to be able to answer that is not necessarily true is just because the person appears from the side of the aggregates or appears to exist from the side of the aggregates, it doesn't mean that the person exists from the side of the aggregates. So that's the sort of thing that we'll say there's no pervasion. It's not necessarily true. That it appears from the side of the aggregates, but it's not necessarily existing from the side of the aggregates.
So this is a real debate. That's why we say debate is important. This is the real debate now. This is normally, we don't say it. We feel it. And we hold to the feeling. But now you need to say it. That things really exist by its own because it appears from that part. You say this, then now the Prasangika gladly opens the discussion. For you, you hold to the teaching, which example is the striped robe, which appears like a snake. Take it and meditate on that. So this is the somewhere we really has a power to whatever we are grasping strongly to the eye, to whatever, it has a power to loosen the grasping. But you haven't still not touched the ground on the emptiness. That's where Lama Tsongkhapa is coming now. So we take a break now.
Now, isn't also, another way of saying it, that Chittamatras would say that you get the appearance of the snake coming from the mind, but Prasangika is saying that it's also the appearance of true existence that is coming from the mind.
Yes, yeah.
So it's not just because the snake appears, but it's because true existence appears that is false.
Yeah. Okay, so we now take a break and then continue with which verse we are in now? Second, third?
Fifth, you finished.
Fifth.
Finished the fifth.
Fifth. Wow.
We're discussing the fifth.
Oh yeah, the fifth. So I think I can finish. Okay.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Iram Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. Due to this merit may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.